He howled at night over XERF as Wolfman Jack, but in the daytime he was businessman Bob Smith, booking preachers and anyone else who wanted to buy airtime over the border blaster. Originally, Smith ran the XERF operations from a hotel in Del Rio, Texas. Eventually, he relocated to Shreveport. In late 1964, in Shreveport, Smith and his partner Marvin Kosofsky signed a deal to co-own KUXL, a daytime R&B only radio station located in Minneapolis-St. Paul, Minnesota. While Smith stayed at the border, Kosofsky traveled to the Twin Cities to recruit a new air staff for their brand new operation. Upon his arrival in Minnesota, Kosofsky was told of an out-of-work R&B DJ who had recently been fired from the top 40 KDWB for sounding too black. His real name is Ralph Hall. On the air back then, he was known as Preacher Paul Anthony.
There's a guy come up from Shreveport, Marvin Kosofsky from Shreveport, came up. He bought that station, so he was looking for an R&B disc jockey. He heard about me, and I heard about him. We got together, and he said, well, bring me some records over to the station. It was a daytime station. They shut down at sundown, off during the night. So come over to the station and do me a show. So I had a one-man audience. He sat in the newsroom where I could see him through the window, and I started playing records for him. And I went for almost 2 hours. And I thought, what in the world? How come this? I could see him, and I even brought tears to his eyes. I had a one-man audience, and I was playing to him, playing this music that I really like and then feel with. And I could see that I really had him in the palm of my hand, so to speak. He let me go for 2 hours, and I thought, wow, he must be enjoying it. And he finally come in and he said, you're great. Okay, so you're my disc jockey, and I got a manager coming in. He'll be your boss. It's Bob Smith, Wolfman Jack. He does XERF out of Shreveport, sending tapes over to Del Rio via Cunha at the time, to the world's most powerful AM radio station. 250,000 watts that thing was licensed for. They only use about 80 over 1,000 during the day, 80 at night. Anyway, Smith was going to come up beginning of January, and I got hired the middle of December, so I had 2 weeks where I had no boss at all, just me and the records and a radio station to have fun with, and I had a great time. He wasn't too bad when he arrived. He left me alone with the music, but he was a boss, you know.
Although Bob Smith was the general manager of KUXL, based at the Viking Motel in St. Paul, he never appeared on that station as Wolfman Jack. Ralph Hall remembers.
Yeah, he never did any air work in Minneapolis there. We have a blind friend there who's a walking encyclopedia of radio stations and disc jockeys and things. And he called me up years ago and said, I got a really rare thing here in my tape collection. I have Bob Smith as Bob Smith doing a commercial on KUXL without the Wolfman voice, just Bob Smith. You know, that's kind of neat. He's got that. But he was always sending tapes down to XERF from our studio there in Minneapolis as the Wolfman. We'd do hour-long tapes and send them down.
Around this time, the Wolfman became dissatisfied with appearing on just one of the border blasters. So he made an arrangement with the man who controlled the U.S. rights to many of the other X stations to get the Wolfman on as many of those powerful Mexican outlets as possible. Lonnie Napier, who later went to work for the Wolfman in Los Angeles, recalls the setup.
Harold Schwartz, at the time, was partners with Tio Pachera down in Mexico. And they gave Wolfman basically the American rights. In other words, he could sell the station in America. And then they gave him the opportunity to go to Los Angeles and do the same thing with a station called XERB.
He was doing XERF and XEG in Monterrey, Mexico. That's a pure 100,000 watt station. And then we, through one means or another, we got a hold of XERB, which was south of Tijuana, Rancho del Mar, about 15 miles south of the border, below San Diego. And it covered the 13 western states and the west thing. Those three stations, we were just slightly ahead of Ted Turner. With XERB, we covered from the Rockies west. XERF covered from the Rockies to the Appalachians and all of Central and Central America and Mexico, Canada, U.S., all in one station. And then XEG beamed to the east. So with those three Mexican stations, we had the entire North American continent covered. Anybody could listen to us. And they did. XERB got really popular, and having a great success with it, running it from Minneapolis, and I didn't care for it, hanging around there in the wintertime. So let's get going. Let's move out to L.A. and let's move to L.A. We'll call it. Well, we won't call it an L.A. station. We'll just say it's 50,000 watts over Los Angeles.
So you passed off this Mexican station as being kind of a local
it's
LA station.
Yeah, the transmitter was 125, 150 miles away from the studio.